Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio. Brought to you by OnPay, Atlanta's new standard in payroll. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and this is going to be a fun one. But before we get started, it's important to recognize our sponsor, OnPay. Without them, we could not be sharing these important stories. Today on Atlanta Business Radio, we have Mark Feinberg with OTHRStore. Welcome, Mark.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Well, I'm excited to learn what you're up to. Tell us about OTHRStore. How you serving folks?
Yeah, so OTHRStore actually spun out of another company that I'm involved in called OTHRSource, which actually spun out of another company called High Road Ice Cream, which you might be familiar with, and some of the listeners in the audience might be familiar with. So I got involved with High Road Ice Cream as an advisor in 2010, ended up on the board, ended up running the company or helping to run the company for a period of time. We created an internal in-store support mechanism to help stock shelves and do shelf management. I spun that out in 2018 into a company that became OTHRSource, which was an in-store support company for smaller brands. And then last year when COVID hit, we wanted to be in service to our emerging brand community and give them another place to sell from, since everybody was very scared about the future. And we quickly launched OTHRStore, which is a online platform for emerging food, beverage, and now really any CPG category, fashion, accessories, nutraceutical, pet, to sell their products on our platform, and also receive a suite of support services to help them succeed. So it really came out of a need to be in service to our community last year when things were very murky, and it's turned out to be extremely beneficial platform for a lot of smaller brands.
Now, as part of their kind of inclusion in this platform, are they getting to kind of learn from, the folks at High Road in terms of how they were able to gain shelf space and launch and grow? Because there's a lot of platforms out there to put your stuff, but is there some consulting or some advice that comes with this?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of my frustrations, and before I got involved operationally with High Road, I was an investor, and I, ended up, being part of High Road, and I just saw how hard it was to do everything, and in a lot of cases, the big food companies made it even harder for these smaller upstarts to succeed. And a lot of it was like not knowing where to go for anything, really. Marketing services, sales services, how do you even get on the shelf at retail, supply chain, raw materials, all of it. And, I kind of looked at this and I was just like, these are just amazing people. The Schroeders at High Road, amazing people. Everybody who starts these products, for the most part, amazing people, yet it was just brutal in terms of creating a business when all they really wanted to do was bring amazing product, to our bellies and to our families. And so when we launched OTHRStore, I said, listen, what I'm not going to do is just be another platform where people list their products and it's up to them to fend for themselves. We're going to provide marketing services. We're going to provide access to capital advisory services. We're going to provide access to mentorship in their specific category. We're going to provide access to supply chain consultants, fulfillment consultants. In our case, we built a centralized drop ship operation for them to benefit from. We built a proprietary digital influencer network, which now reaches 1 million plus consumers and growing, right? So, and we're just going to continue to layer on those value added services because, again, it's hard for these companies to do what they're doing. It's hard to run any business, but especially in these categories. And, I wake up every day and the team wakes up every day saying, okay, what could we layer on in terms of services to make their lives easier, for them to focus on bringing new products, let them dream about whatever the next flavor is or whatever the next product is and whatever their category is. And then, we'll help them, do the rest. So great question. And definitely an area that, we're leaning heavily in, is to provide these added value categories to all of these brands.
And as you mentioned, it's hard enough to just come up with a great idea or a great flavor or a great product that stands out. That by itself is hard. Then you layer in all of these things that people don't know or don't even know that they don't know yet, right? Because they come up with something that's great that their friends and family are all fired up about, but just to take it from just that, maybe home chef, home cook level to then, manufacturing it at scale to sell it to a store or at a festival or wherever else they're selling it, or on a platform like yours. There are so many unknowns. Just in the best case scenarios, layer in these kind of underrepresented brand owners and the challenges they face. I mean, there's definitely a lot of need for services like you're describing.
Yeah, 100%. It was, again, I had been involved with a number of different businesses. I came from the tech world. I invested in and ended up running a tech company. I invested in real estate. I ended up being part of a development organization. I really had a lot of insight into a lot of different companies. And then when I showed up in the food and beverage industry, and I saw just the sheer number of moving parts and just the barriers that were created, Keith and Nikki, Keith being a white male and Nikki being a white female, hard enough. For a lot of the brands that we represent on OTHRStore, they're minority brands, they're female-owned brands, LGBTQ brands. You take all of the challenges, of starting a new brand as a white male, and then you layer on, some of the systemic barriers, which very often just it's lack of access. It's not having the same access to manufacturers. It's not having the same access to the same companies that can help with marketing and help with getting you onto the shelf. Because a lot of those companies that help with these things right now are very white male driven. The industry of retail is still, it's gotten better and it continues to get better, but it's still very white male dominated. And, for us, leveraging, my privilege, leveraging, I'm a white straight male, and I have a lot of access and a lot of networks that I've built over the years, and a lot of it, is from being white male, is opening up those channels and trying to keep, I see it. I had a conversation earlier this morning with a food entrepreneur. A lot of times they just don't know where to go, and there's a lot of bad apples out there, and you end up in situations that could have been avoided. But again, it's, things that you might not know until it's too late. So with OTHRStore, we're just trying to provide that access, that good housekeeping seal of approval in terms of partnerships and people who really care genuinely about, supporting these underrepresented brands, because people are out there. It's just getting into those right streams of people. And that's really what OTHRStore, outside of just being a platform to sell to, it's really getting into that right group of people who are going to help you break through some of these systemic barriers that are unfortunately in place.
So then walk me through what it's like to, like say I have a product and I want to raise my hand to say, hey, am I a good fit for OTHRStore? How does it work to get a product into your store?
Yeah, so we formed a partnership with a group called Range Me. Range Me, the easiest explanation for Range Me is, let's say you're a brand and you want to be found by a retailer, whether it be traditional or online retailer. You list your products on Range Me, and then groups like OTHRStore, Publix, Walmart, they will go to Range Me and go shopping. Say, okay, well, I'm looking for this, these types of brands in these particular categories. So what we've done is we formed a partnership with them, and brands that are interested in being on the OTHRStore platform can go to Range Me. They can say we're interested in being on the OTHRStore platform. It lands into kind of our screening area dashboard, and then we have a category review team. So, we'll get hundreds of brands that submit, and we're being mindful. Again, we want to make sure that it falls into the especially the minority owned brands and the female owned brands and LGBTQ brands. We do have some folks that try to sneak in that don't fall into those categories, and the team works through those. We also just want to make sure we don't end up with like 500 versions of soap. We're okay with 20, but 500 is a little much. So our team goes through all that, and they go through the process, and then they reach out to the brands, and then they start the process of onboarding. So that's generally how the process works. There's a link that they go to, they fill out all their information that they're interested, and then it kicks off the process with our category review and onboarding team.
And then you mentioned like some categories maybe are fuller than others. Are there certain categories you wish you had more brands in, or are there some that you're actively looking to fill categories in terms of number of brands?
Yeah, so we're definitely more food and beverage focused right now, but we're expanding into pet, fashion and accessories, nutraceuticals, home goods, baby food and baby products. So those categories, health and beauty, those are categories that I know the team is focused more on. With that said, still we're not turning away from food and beverage brands. I would say probably the beverage category is particularly crowded right now, so we're just being very selective on beverage. But some of those other categories that I just mentioned are definitely where the team is focused more on expansion. But I would say, if there are brands out there listening, or if people know of brand owners, I would encourage you and encourage them to submit, because again, I know the team is looking at it both from a product fit standpoint, but the story matters a lot too. The mission and the purpose, and just to give you an example, one of the brands that we're working with, formerly incarcerated Black man, started a skincare product line for men, and the whole story is just unbelievable what he's endured to get to this point. And we definitely put value on some of these stories. So even if it's a category that we might be oversaturated in, if the story is there, it's very hard for us to walk away from.
Now, are you looking exclusively for Atlanta brands, or at this point, they can come from anywhere?
They can come from anywhere. Of course, we love to have Atlanta brands, and we do have a handful of Atlanta brands. But yeah, we're national at this point in terms of the brand profile.
And then, is this something that a good fit for you is somebody that their brand is exclusive to your platform, or they can be on the other platforms as well?
No, I would never encourage any brand, to be exclusive to any platform. Very similar, like you would want to be in a Publix and a Kroger, and a Whole Foods. I encourage brands to be on multiple e-commerce platforms as well. All of us are doing different things for marketing. You reach different audiences. Our digital influencer network and our reach is different than perhaps, a Thrive Market. Again, very similar to how a Whole Foods reaches a different customer than a Publix or a Kroger. So no, we would never suggest there be any exclusivity, that you should be on as many platforms as you can, especially when you're a smaller brand, because again, it's all about eyeballs and reaching different audience sectors, and all of the platforms that are out there. We're all reaching different groups. So highly encourage you be on multiple platforms.
So what do you need more of at this point? How can we help you? Do you need more brands?
We're always looking for unique brands. There's no shortage of brands. But again, for us, it's about impact. If there are brands out there that fall into those underrepresented categories, we'd love to hear from them. I could say, a couple, obviously, all of these brands need more sales. They are there to support their families. They're there to grow. So shop on OTHRStore. There's some pretty good promotions going on. It's OTHRStore.com, all one word, OTHRStore.com. So shop on OTHRStore. That ultimately helps the brands that we're supporting. And again, that's what we're all about. And, we're about promoting them and helping them reach more consumers. And, for us, if we get this right, it's multi-generational change for a lot of these families that are first-time entrepreneurs. And obviously, sales for them is everything. So shop on OTHRStore. That's the biggest thing you can do to help them, and that ultimately helps us. And we're here to help them ultimately.
Right. So you want OTHRStore to be the go-to place for these underrepresented brands and the people who want to support those folks. Exactly.
That's right.
And then that's OTHRStore.com is the website?
Yep, that's right.
Good stuff, Mark.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Well, I was just thanking you for doing this kind of work, because it's important, because, for you to achieve what you've achieved and had the success that you've had, and then feel the calling to give back and to help others up so they don't have to kind of go through the scar tissue and pain that you went through to get to where you are. That's very generous, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that. I can say that, I've been on my own journey. Like a lot of us early on, it was about asset accumulation. Warren Buffett was a childhood, call it idol. And he had this saying. He said, well, I'm not really into material things, but, I use money to keep score. And, I kind of adopted that. And then I learned that scorekeeping didn't really fit well with me. While the scoreboard was running up, my soul wasn't really aligned. So, really just set out, for a lot of soul searching, and had made a lot of progress in terms of recognizing that impact is more of what drives me. And then I was fortunate enough to be in the Leadership Atlanta class for 2020, and was in an amazing group of folks, which included Bernice King, Martin Luther King's daughter. And I still remember raising my hand and saying, I do a lot in the community and around equal and social justice, but I never feel like I'm doing enough. And, she kind of looked back at me and she said, well, I'm not going to solve that for you. Like, in a lot of ways, people who look like you created a lot of the issues that we're dealing with. And I would put it back in your court to figure out like what it is you can do on top. And, after getting over the kind of the ego blow of, thinking I was raising my hand and trying to get help. After I got over that initial response, I kind of got to work and I said, all right, good point. What am I going to do? And OTHRStore is definitely an extension of that. Leadership Atlanta definitely played a role in helping me get to more clarity in terms of what my purpose and mission is. And again, I'm beyond privileged and fortunate. I've been privileged and fortunate throughout my career, and I realized that my privilege of being a white straight male could be used to really help a lot of folks. So that's why I exist today. That's what gets me up every single day in terms of how many people we can help break through these barriers. So that's what keeps me going now.
Amen to that. I mean, that's what you want to be able to keep score on, is the amount of ripples you're making throughout the community. So congratulations again. Thank you again for the work you're doing. And that's OTHRStore.com. Mark Feinberg, thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio.